My name is Sherry Walling, as Jordan said. Those of you who are newer to MicroConf know that I go with Rob. We're a pair. I'm a clinical psychologist, and before spending a lot of time with founders, hanging out in rooms like this, I spent a lot of time cultivating expertise in treating post-traumatic stress disorder. So I work with people who have been through very intense things, which actually helps me be surprisingly qualified to work with y'all. So much of what is going to make you successful or not successful in your venture is about what happens in your head. The mind game of this, the part of this that is about your own wit, your own capacity to logic through, to choose, to decide any number of things related to your business, but perhaps more importantly, to decide what kind of life you want for yourself. What kind of choices will shape who you are in the context of building your business. Man is condemned to be free. Condemned to be free. Because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he or she, of course, does. The weight of what you're doing is heavy. There's a tremendous responsibility on you to choose well how you live, to choose well how you build your business, to choose well in any number of the millions of tiny little decisions that go into what you're creating. And the burden of that is significant. The stress of that is significant. And it's also your great gift, isn't it? Because you all are kind of like masters of the internet, which means you have tremendous skills that are desired. You have lots of choices. Do you keep consulting? Do you quit your job and launch your app? How do you do this? Those are kind of heavy questions. They're heavy burdens. You're free to choose, but you bear the responsibility of all of those choices. So no pressure. We know where the poison is, right? It's in both choices. It's in all of the things. There are lots and lots of ways to live, and all of them are hard in their own ways. So you are choosing which poison to take. You're choosing which poison glass to drink from. And you know it's going to be hard, don't you? If you don't, you will after my talk. But we have to get into the corners of your mind, the parts of you that can be honest about how hard this is. Because we come to a place like this, and I think it's really easy to play a little bit of like comparison game, kind of wanting to tell the story of how well you're doing, how well your app is doing, how much you're killing it. And those are great stories because they inspire all of us, and they're important to hear, and it's important to learn from each other. But one thing that I loved about what Jordan did today was to really talk about some of the failures, some of the really, really tough moments. Because your ability to handle those moments, to handle failure, to handle discouragement, to handle all of the things that go along with what make this hard, that's going to test whether you're actually going to be successful or not. So we have to create little spaces, even in your own head, to be honest about your struggles. And hopefully, in the room with other people, to create some space to be honest about your struggles. Because it's going to be hard. And I say this not just as, someone who's sort of coming up here and with the warning flag, but I say this as a psychologist. There are some very significant mental health burdens that go along with being a founder, go along with being an entrepreneur. We see increased levels of anxiety and depression in the founder community. We see incredible isolation sometimes within the founder community. And I'm sure you all know stories of folks who have kind of flown too close to the sun and have crashed hard. In the most extreme cases, have crashed hard and taken their own lives. There is a price that you're paying for this. You're drinking some poison. And I know this We know this as a family. This picture is from 2007 or so. This was the year that Rob was transitioning from consulting into doing products. It was the year that I was doing a research fellowship at Yale. We had this beautiful 2-year-old. And from the outside, it looked like we were killing it. Like we were, sort of talented people with great opportunities and this sweet little family, and things were kind of all as they were supposed to be. Sort of like living the dream. But for like 6 months, we would work long days and come back to our very cold New England apartment and sort of have this conversation very, very cordially, very respectfully about how we were going to handle shared custody because we couldn't sort of stand each other anymore and we wanted to dissolve the family. And when we look back, we talk about this year a lot, and when we look back on this year in our lives, we look at all of the things that went into making it hard, but we also look at all of the failures that we sort of had all along because we just weren't telling the truth about how hard it was, which means we weren't allowing ourselves to do what we needed to do to really be prepared for the toughness, so to speak. Like if you know you're going to run a marathon, you're going to train, right? Hopefully. You're going to be ready. You're going to prepare your mind and your body to do something intense. But if you're not telling yourself the truth about how hard the thing is that you're going to do, then you don't also give yourself the open door to prepare. And that we won't do again because we sort of recognized being a founder is very difficult. It's difficult on the founder, it's difficult on the family, and we have to be prepared. We have to train. So how do you win the battle of wits? The first thing is that you have to really know the poison. The dread pirate Roberts spent years building immunity to iocane powder. You have to know the poison. You have to tell the truth about what you're preparing to do. And then you have to build immunity. You have to do active things that get you ready for the task at hand. So, iocane powder. What are the iocane powders of the startup life? What makes it hard? This is not a rhetorical question. Yeah? The hours, yes. The time. Uncertainty? Balance or lack of balance? Money, no safety net. Self-doubt, times 2. Being lonely. I missed that one. Critics, yes. Fear of failure. Fear in general. So anxiety is sort of a big term to encapsulate a lot of the things that you all said. Fear, anxiety, worry. Burnout, which is part of the hours problem, part of the loneliness problem, this sense in which you just don't have the raw material to do what needs to be done. You just don't have the horsepower. Isolation, loneliness, being the solo founder, being the one person who is responsible for all of it. Failure, fear of failure. And then what I call implosion. There we go. Oh no, I have to do these again. Get there. Yeah. Implosion, when things really get bad and really fall apart. So I want to talk about each of these pieces because I want to outline what the poison is. We're going to study the poison together. First one is anxiety. So this is the reel that plays in your mind when you are awake at 2 a.m. and your heart's beating fast and you can't breathe because you're really not sure if you have enough money to make payroll or if you have enough money to fund the next aspect of your startup. These are the things that you can't control, perhaps, the what-ifs, the shoulds, the things that swirl in your mind. And you experience it in your body as well. Anxiety is a very embodied experience. It's very, very closely tied to long-term health problems. When your mind won't stop, your muscles get tense, you get digestive problems, you don't sleep well, you have headaches. People experience impulsive behavior, increased heart rate, irritability, feeling frantic, distracted, seeking escape. This is the fight or flight response. And it's a really powerful, important neurological capacity when you're being chased by a tiger. But when you're spending years building a startup, your body isn't meant to sustain that level of adrenaline, that level of arousal. So it becomes very dangerous to you. Very dangerous to your body, very dangerous to your relationships, and frankly, you just can't think very straight, so it's dangerous to your business too. A study that looked at the relationship between, or the level of anxiety in founders, looked at the level of anxiety in founders as well as their spouses, and found both founders and their spouses to experience significantly greater levels of anxiety than non-entrepreneurial families. So the other piece of this is that what you are embarking on is a shared experience for the people that love you, for the people around you, which kind of, I think, ups the stakes. So there's some poison in it for you and for them. Of course, anxiety is not all bad. It helps us to be awake. It helps us to be alert. This is the Yerkes-Dodson principle. When anxiety or physiological arousal is at a certain level, we see it, laser pointer, we see it peak here, performance peaks there. But when the anxiety becomes too much, performance begins to plummet. So some anxiety, fine, great, you're doing something important, you're doing something hard, of course you're going to be awake about it. But when that anxiety begins to saturate you and overwhelm you, your brain no longer functions effectively. And it's not helpful to keep powering through when you're flooded with anxiety. So if anxiety is sort of this sense of being on fire and unable to turn away and totally absorbed and kind of swimming in the ups and downs, the troubles of your app, burnout sort of happens on the other end of the spectrum. Burnout is this sense of emotional exhaustion. I can't care anymore. I have no more F's to give. It's often accompanied by cynicism. This is when you are irate at your customers. You sort of learn to hate your customers because they just want from you things that maybe you can't perfectly provide, or they're tweeting about you in ways that feel unfair and unkind. You become cynical, and you begin to feel that what you're doing has no point, that it's all of this effort that you're putting in is for nothing, a lost sense of efficacy. So burnout is when the flame kind of begins to go out. But here you are, halfway through a startup or having a little baby company, and you're exhausted and tired, and there's no more energy. There's another little point of poison. I'm glad someone mentioned this, because I think one of the things that might drive all of the other mental health problems, drive some of the anxiety, drive some of the burnout, drives some of the other aspects of poison that we're talking about, I think it really might come down to isolation. There's this whole new body of research into the health consequences of loneliness. So people who are lonely literally do not live as long as people who are not lonely, when you control for all kinds of other health factors, etc. And most of you in this room are doing startups relatively by yourselves. Maybe you have some programmers who work for you, or you hire out some marketing and design. But especially at the beginning, this is your baby. It is your thing. It lives in your head. It is a product of your blood, sweat, and tears. And you are the one who is responsible for whether it succeeds or not. And that's scary, and it's isolating. No one cares as much as you do. I love my husband. I'm super proud of him. I have been part of the conversations and involved in the whole journey for the last 17 years of this startup life. But I don't care as much as he cares, let's be honest. It lives in him, in his head, and I can be a good partner to him, but I just don't care as much as he does. So he's going to carry that weight by himself. I'm so glad that Jordan talked about this today, because this is, again, one of these essential pieces of how do you cope with this day in and day out, and this is our experience of failure. Because, as Jordan talked about, failure is inevitable. Nothing is going to go according to plan. Nothing is going to work the way that you want it to. There will be big F's and little F's, big fails and little fails, but the way that you talk to yourself about what's happening when you have a setback is incredibly important. The way that you cope with how it feels when the thing that you're pouring yourself into doesn't love you back, doesn't do what you're asking it to do. Do you feel ashamed? Do you stop talking about it? Do you not tell anyone? Do you build a narrative about yourself that says, I'm just not good at this? Or do you ignore it altogether and kind of brush it under the rug and fail to listen to it or pay attention to it? Failure should be at the sort of front of our minds all the time. Not because it's the thing that we're afraid of, per se, but because it's the thing that we know is part of the process. And open your eyes and see it coming. It's a lot easier to deal with the poison when you know the poison and you have some immunity to it. One of the reasons that I do this work and spend time with founders and leave my cushy clinical practice is because I've seen this go terribly wrong. I've seen it go terribly wrong, where people's lives fall apart. People lose their families, people lose their businesses, people lose their lives. And I want to not let that happen anymore. I want to create a culture of technologists or of founders or of entrepreneurs or however you want to describe yourselves. I want to create a culture of people who are really able to be well and want to be well and want to live a full and whole life outside of just selling shit and getting more customers. That's good too. But the risks are real. We are vulnerable creatures. We can get hurt, we can break. And sometimes when you go all in, when you fall in love with this company, with this idea, and you do everything that you can to create it and to make it, sometimes it just doesn't work out. And I want people to know that that's a recoverable experience. The worst case scenario, it all doesn't work out, is still a recoverable experience. So now that I have thoroughly depressed you, which is what I tend to do in my talks, apparently. Yesterday, I talked a lot about death, so this is going to be better. The truth is that we know that there's sort of poison everywhere, right? We could be talking about you becoming a physician or you opening a mechanic shop. It's all hard. There's just different iterations of what's hard. So let's take a moment, and if you will, if you feel comfortable to do so, just close your eyes for a second where you are. Because one of the best superpowers that I can give you as a mental health professional is something your body already knows how to do. So put your feet flat on the floor. Put your hands in your lap or beside you or just on the table in front of you, somewhere where they're supported, where you feel comfortable. Just notice like a moment of silence. And then pay attention to how the oxygen enters your body, coming in through your nostrils, sort of traveling down the back of your throat. Imagine it traveling down your neck, through your chest, all the way down under your rib cage, maybe all the way down to your belly button. See if you can get that oxygen all the way down there. Maybe let your belly expand when you inhale. And then let's reverse it. As you're ready to exhale, pull your belly button in towards your spine and let that carbon dioxide reverse direction and travel all the way up through your ribs, through your neck, the back of your throat, out your nose. And do that a couple times. Maybe slowing your breath so that it takes 4 counts in, 4 counts out, counting in your head, slowing everything down. There's a little bit of magic in stillness. Notice what's happening in your body. Maybe you're sinking a little bit more into that chair. Maybe your heart is actually slowing down a little bit. So when you're ready, you can kind of wiggle around in your body and come back, open your eyes. Sometimes I'm afraid after I do my talks that people are going to be like, that lady just told us that we should breathe. And maybe that's what you say, that's fine. But you guys, it is a superpower if you can learn to do that well. If you can identify when you need to calm your body down and just slow everything down that way. 4 breaths, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, will turn the table on how you're physiologically experiencing anxiety. So deep breathing is sort of this new area of research in mental health. And we know that deep breathing improves heart, brain, and digestive function. It stimulates the immune system. And it helps to regulate mood, decrease anxiety, and maybe even alters the expression of genes. There's a new study that came out in Science, actually I read about it today, that's trying to identify this little set of neurons right here in the back of our brains. And those little set of neurons appear to be the kind of brain emergency response alarm bell, and they are triggered by respiration. So as your breathing changes, this little posse of neurons shoots information to the rest of the brain sort of about the status, uh-oh, we're breathing fast, we're breathing shallow, we got an emergency here. And the brain then responds accordingly. So how do you win the battle of wits? You have to build immunity. You have to train. You have to get yourself ready to do something hard. And you have to do this in multiple dimensions of your life, in your body, in your mind, in yourself, and in your relationships. So breathing is one of those skills that if you can just remember to do it, I promise it will help you. Here's another one. I know that some of you are into marketing. So I have a marketing question. How much do you think I could get people to pay for a product that improves memory, improves concentration, decreases excessive eating, improves mood, builds immunity, decreases accidents and mistakes, improves productivity, improves skin clarity, and extends life. Does that sound like a really good thing to sell on Amazon? Do you think I would make a lot of money doing that if I could bottle it up? Who knows what I'm talking about? Yeah, you guys. Sleep. So sometimes you might find yourself saying, why do I feel so terrible? And your body will say, because coffee is not a meal, eat a vegetable, sleep, and you're like, oh, I don't know why, I guess I'll never know. And your body's like, oh my God. If you battle your body, you will lose. If you don't let your body and your health be part of the superpower of what you bring to your startup, you are missing a major asset. If you abuse your body weeks, months, years on end, you will decrease your productivity, you will be irritable and unpleasant, and you'll be ugly. So, for reals. So do this thing well by not shortchanging what you already know you need. You can make lots of sacrifices for your startup. I get it. You love it like a baby. I did this whole talk yesterday about the neuroscience behind how deeply attached people are to their startups. I get it. You will do crazy things for this company that you love. Fine, but please eat and sleep while you're doing that, and maybe drink water. Let's go a little bit deeper here. Part of this work is really understanding your own self, your own capacity to do hard things. But it's about being self-reflective, about knowing your blind spots, about knowing what kind of customer is likely to help facilitate you being irrational and terrible, and knowing what kind of customer is your sweet spot, because some you want to pursue and some maybe not so much. So really knowing how you can best utilize your own internal assets to be successful. So part of that is figuring out, wow, what kind of person am I? Paying attention to what's going on inside of you. And I talk about this about like having an inner life, having a capacity to be self-reflective. What does it look like inside of you? Is it sort of like dry and crusty and uninteresting, like a place of like a potential murder scene, or, sorry, I was just, what's the movie with Walter White, the show? Breaking Bad, yeah, okay. Is it like Breaking Bad in your world? Or when you think about what's happening inside of you, is there some life in there? Are you aware of your own interesting thoughts? Are you aware of your own emotional life? Are you taking care? Are you sort of tending that? Are you keeping it well watered? Self-knowledge is no guarantee of happiness, but it is on the side of happiness and can supply the courage to fight for it. When things get very difficult, if you have a deep sense of your own value and your own desire to preserve and take good care of your own soul, inner life, emotional well-being, you'll have that much more energy to protect something that's important to you. So how might one do this? The first thing that goes into creating an inner life is to pay attention. Or as y'all might say, track your personal metrics. Cultivate self-reflection. Pay attention to how you're doing. So some personal metrics you might pay attention to are noticing the highs and lows in your day, in your life. What do you really love? What are your sweet spots? What pieces of your work, your family experience, your day-to-day life really kind of infuse you with energy? Where do you feel good and satisfied? And where do you not? What pieces of your work, of your business, of your family, of your existence kind of take joy from you? Where are you like, oh, you're dreading it, you hate it? It sucks. So knowing, paying attention, where am I alive and where am I feeling dead and numb and bored, allows you to be able to choose, hey, how can I get more aliveness? How can I readjust things so that I am living in my sweet spot more? And how can I begin to let go of some of the things that are consistently showing up on my low point scale? So I have a friend named Carrie, and we talk most Sunday nights, and we review our highs and our lows from our week. And we've been doing this for years now. And we just take little notes and sort of jot down, and we notice patterns in each other's lives over time. And one of the things that was really powerful for me in this kind of practice, tracking these personal metrics, was to realize that week after week after week, I was really irritated about some very specific parts of my job as a professor. I really hated faculty meetings. I really hated grading. There was a whole pile of things that were just on the I really hate this list. And over time, tracking this data, looking at the data over time, was like, I don't think I should be doing this job. I'm not actually happy doing this job. And I'm not sure that I would have gotten there had I not been tracking this over time. Because it was the job that I trained for. I went to school for a very long time. I was going to be an academic. I was going to write papers and, do all this stuff. And it was super hard to walk away from that until I realized, I'm just listening to my own self. Okay, so what? I don't like this job. Now I know that I can change it. But if you're not paying attention, you'll never know. If you're not paying attention, you'll never know. So another thing to maybe record is to look at your mood, look at sleep, look at your energy level. If you're someone who maybe struggles a little bit with some depression or irritability, or you kind of feel that you're someone who gets pulled into the ups and downs of life, and you feel like moods that go along with that, pay attention to what tends to trigger those lower moods for you, or what tends to be associated with sleeplessness for you. Just begin to notice how your life takes shape within you, or sort of shapes how your body is doing. Another thing to maybe pay attention to, and I think Brennan does this, we talked about it on a podcast a while ago, is to simply notice what you did in your week. Hey, this is what I set out to accomplish this week. This is what I did this week. But also jot down a little note about how you felt about that activity. So you're associating, again, taking in all of this information about these are the things that I'm spending my life doing. Do I like them or not? Because you would be surprised how easy it is to live out a whole life and really not pay attention to whether you're having a good time. And I'm not a hedonist. I don't think that we should do everything just because it feels good and we want to have a good time. But we do only have one shot at this experience, so we might as well do the best we can to have as much sort of joy and goodness in our lives as we can. Another thing that is sort of this superpower within the understanding of what it means to be psychologically well is to practice gratitude. It is really easy as a founder, especially early on, to know all of the things that need to be done and all of the things that aren't right yet and all of the things on your to-do list. And that kind of pressure can feel really crappy and overwhelming. But if you just notice one or two things that were hey, well, this is good. I'm grateful for this. This was a win today. Then that can have a really nice counterbalancing effect to the weight of all of the to-dos and all of the things that are maybe not working the way that you want them to. Be balanced in your assessment of how it's going. Notice the positive things. Write them down. Make it valuable enough for you to have a positive emotional experience that you're going to spend the time paying attention. And just observe. You don't have to judge. You don't have to sort of be critical of yourself for not having more fun doing the thing that you thought would be fun. It's not fun. It doesn't matter. Just notice it. Don't get all uptight about it. Don't tell yourself that you should feel differently than you do. Just take in the data. You're science people, right? So a lot of this is about anxiety mastery. It's about minimizing the things that make you crazy, minimizing the things that will eat up your resources needlessly, and being very proactive about how you manage the hard things, the things that create anxiety for you. So like I said, you're noticing anxiety, pay attention, track the metrics, notice what brings you anxiety, look around, be really, again, kind of data-driven, identify the internal and external causes of anxiety. So anxiety can be caused by things that are happening around you in your life. Anxiety can be caused by things that are happening within you, in your body and in your mind. Fear of failure, that causes a lot of anxiety. If you're feeling like you're waking up in the middle of the night and you're thinking about the what if, pay attention to that. That's a source of anxiety that you can do something about. Isolate the solvable, make a list. These are the things that are stressing me out. I can get rid of this one, I can give that to someone else. Problem solve. And the things that you can't control, because we all know there's lots of things that cause a lot of anxiety and stress and unhappiness in our lives that we just can't do anything about. Once you've noticed, okay, this is really tough, but I have no wiggle room here. I have to parent this particular kid. I'm in. Can't undo that. Just kidding, I love my kids. Then we have a conversation about how do you cope with it. If you can't change it, how do you feel differently about it? Use stress to fuel motivation. Use stress to help you feel alive and get shit done. Don't let it beat you up. Remember that curve. Get the right amount of energy and arousal so that you're not falling down onto the other side of the mountain where you can no longer function well. One of the strategies that Rob and I have talked a lot about on the Zen Founder podcast, or that we have cultivated in our own lives, is to practice regular retreats, to spend a couple of weekends a year unplugged, separate from everything, because we have found that it's very difficult to cultivate this self-awareness. It's very difficult to do this internal assessment of how are things going with me? When we're in the midst of the day-to-day tasks that just need to get done, the people that need to be taken care of, and the things that are on our to-do list. So actively taking time to step away from the grind in order to do the really deep question of what do I want in my life? How's it going? What are my goals? This is not a vacation. I can't stress this enough. This is not I'm going to go sit on the beach and have a Mai Tai. This is really intense inner work. It's a time in. It's a time when you step into the bigger questions of yourself and the bigger questions of your business, and you do the really hard work of asking, am I okay? And if not, what do I need to do to be okay? It's very focused. We all have lots and lots of choices to make about how we spend our time and who we're going to be. And we can't make those choices if we're not paying attention. So we're always asking, what matters to you? What's important to you? What do you need to stay alive? Most of us, in addition to sleep, food, water, need human connection. We are very, very relational creatures. Even those of us that are introverts and really don't actually like people very much, we need people. We don't need lots of friends. We don't need to be the cool kid at the club, but we need a couple of people that care about us, that we care about, that we're connected to. It's an essential part of life. It's also super helpful in your business. You come to a place like MicroConf because there are other people that get it. There are other people who are either a little behind you or a little ahead of you, but they have different ideas, they have different experiences. You can learn from them, you can teach them, you can contribute. And there's this beautiful reciprocity that happens when we allow other people to really be in our lives. in ways that are very productive for us as humans, but also really important for us in our businesses. So if you don't have a crew, if you don't have a circle of people who help you to counterbalance the isolation that goes into being a founder, you really should not leave MicroConf without putting that in place in some way. So that can be a mastermind group, that can be a sort of monthly hangout with other business owners or founders who are in your city. It could be virtual, it can be in person. But you need a place where you can sort of talk about this stuff because the burdens are too heavy for most of us to carry by ourselves over the long run. We need some other ideas, some other information, some camaraderie. Who is your feedback loop? Who's helping you decide when you're doing well or not doing well? Who's helping you decide, I guess, who's weighing in on your important decisions with you? Everything has been figured out except how to live. You are using your creativity and your intelligence, your technical skills, your marketing skills, your language, all of you to build this business. But you're also using all of that to build a life. And I think it's really easy, especially at the beginning. Starting a business is like having a baby. Like, nobody is really doing that well. Like, it's all very exciting and you're sort of in love, but it is intense. And there's, I think Jordan described it as brute force. You're just making yourself do the next thing. And that's all fine and good, because you're doing something that you love and it's important to you. But don't forget to have an integrated life. Don't forget there are lots of parts of you that need to get fed. You can't only feed the business. People talk about work-life balance, and I don't really like that term anymore because it sort of assumes that you're trying to level it out or even it out between your personal life and your selfhood and your business, and I've never really experienced that. But I like this idea of work-life integration, where whatever you're doing, just be present in that. Throw yourself into that. And I think this is the antithesis of multitasking. So you don't have to balance it all out. You don't have to say, okay, 20 hours a week on my business, and then 20 hours a week with my kids, and then 20 hours a week. Our life doesn't work like that. My schedule doesn't work like that. Take that pressure off. But just be aware that whatever you're doing, throw yourself in. Be all in that particular piece of your life. And create spaces for all of the parts of you to be important. Time to play, time to be in relationship, time to hang out with your friends, time to go on a bike ride. And maybe you're saying, hey, I'm not going to hang out with my friends that much right now because I'm really working on my business. Great. Just schedule it in a couple weeks. Don't let it die altogether. Don't let the pieces of you die in service of your business. So coming back to this idea that this is very hard. And I think, hopefully, I've sort of made the point that one of the things that makes this easier is having some camaraderie about this. Because the things that are hard make you special. Because you're founders. And you're making something unique. You're building something. But you're also not special. Sorry. Because the challenges that you have are 85% the challenges of everybody else in this room. So you don't get to say other people don't understand. You don't get to isolate and cave up and say, no one gets me, because that's bullshit. People will get you if you let them in. This is hard. We are imperfect people. We don't do this right all the time. Nobody lives perfectly. And it's very hard to start a business that is fueled by you. But it's also a really great life. So if you can stick with it, if you can figure out how to make it sustainable for your body, for your mind, for your relationships, for your family, it's a good life. And you should love it and love that you have the privilege of being able to do it. Little mental health moments, the doctor and me. How do you know when you need help? When things are going so badly that intervention is needed? When you have a big change in energy, sleep, or appetite, probably time to see your doctor. When you find yourself crossing the line, when you lose your mind and yell at your kid, or you have a Twitter rage situation with a customer, when you snap at someone, or when you are more aggressive and mean than you normally are, when you feel really unable to focus or shift your thoughts, and that tends to go on for a long time. We call it perseverating. Your thoughts are persevering without you. They won't stop. They won't be altered. When you find yourself saying, "I'm just not myself." When you are noticing that apathy and sadness, flat mood, feeling numb, that stays with you for a long time, couple weeks. And when voices about self-harm begin to speak with authority. And I say this very specifically because the truth is that many people have scary thoughts. Many people have thoughts of wow, it would be easier if I wasn't here anymore. That's not that special or unusual of a thought to have. But when that thought or that voice in your head begins to get really specific about how to enact that situation, or begins to get really loud and clear and authoritative, then it is time to tell someone. It is time to reach out to someone, to get some help, to see a doctor, to go to an ER, to phone a friend. Because we can't afford to lose any more of us. There are incredible, amazing, creative, cool people in this room, and we as a society, we as a MicroConf, we as whatever community you want to break it down to, we need all of us. So we have to figure out how to keep everybody. We can't leave any brothers behind or sisters. So I want you to feel in yourself both the heaviness and the hardness of this, but also how much of a badass you are for doing it. Because you're doing hard things. It's you have hard things for breakfast. You're tough, you're capable, people like you. You can breathe through it. You can work through it. If you just let yourself slow down and calm down and keep at it, then you will know that you are not someone to be trifled with, and people need to know that. I really love, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the thing. In Rob's talk, he cried. I really love coming to MicroConf. I really love coming to MicroConf because it really is sort of the culmination of everything that we've done right in our lives. To decide to do hard things, to decide to do them together, to decide to make a life that more or less makes us happy and we find to be meaningful. And then to see all of you kind of on your own place in that kind of journey is really, really exciting. So thank you for letting me kind of blah, blah, blah about mental health stuff for a while. And if I can be helpful to any of you in any way, there's my info. And that is the end of my slides.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of the in retreat. Is that what you called it? Yes.
Yeah, time in.
Time in, thank you. Do you have a framework for that?
I have an ebook.
I'll get on your mailing list. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all the things you did.
Yeah.
I think we all appreciate that. What do you see in the founder community with regards to like substance abuse as techniques for dealing with a lot of this stuff? I mean, I know you mentioned a lot of things that obviously would drive that.
I don't think I mentioned substance abuse, did I? Oversight on my part. Yeah.
But do you see a pattern there? Do you see, I don't know, solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think many people who have intense jobs try to regulate the intensity of their emotions by using substances. So caffeine to wake up, alcohol to shut down. That's super, super common. And it's a really easy slippery slope into I can't function without my second, third, fourth glass of scotch each night. People believe that they can't sleep, even though alcohol does not help you sleep. It messes up your sleep. But there can easily become sort of a psychological dependence on something that helps you to calm down. I think that's a really probably big problem within the founder community, and I'm glad you brought it up. On the other side, some people also can abuse substances to help them stay awake and focus and work longer than probably they should. I tend to feel like your body is pretty wise, and if you listen to what your body is telling you about, like I really need to sleep, or I really need to move, then those kinds of things are really more helpful, healthy, long-term sustainable strategies than to sort of regulate chemically. So I'm not a fan of like the life hack stuff that has a lot of kind of up-down regulation that's artificial, personally.
And one more.
What do you think about the impact of physical activity to manage stress? And if you think it's positive, how often do you have to do it?
I think it's perfect. Yeah, there's one very well-known, robust research study that I know that looks at just 20 minutes of cardio activity. I think it was 3 times a week for mild depression. And I want to be really clear about that. For mild depression, that level of exercise, so 3 times 20 minutes each, was as effective at sort of alleviating symptoms of depression as a low-grade like Prozac or antidepressant medication. So first things first, if you are not feeling well, pay attention to what's happening in your body. Sleep, eat, move. That is like the first level of intervention for any kind of feeling not okay. That should always be first. Yeah. That's not always sufficient. So again, there are times when medication is important and professional help is important. So I would never, ever want to try to communicate like just eat, sleep, and exercise it away, because that's often helpful at the beginning and can be great for people who are struggling sort of at that low-grade level. But anything that I can do to communicate to all of you that mental health professionals are cool and helpful and you should maybe see one, I want to sing that song too. So mental health professionals are cool and helpful. And honestly, you might want to at least have one in your back pocket, because all high-performing professionals need a safe place to let it all out sometimes. And it's much better for you to pay someone like me than it is for you to really unload on your spouse or on your friends in a way that becomes too burdensome to them. So I'm out of time, but I will happily talk about this in workshops with people.